Thank you. And yes, Danny is very creative with his terms. He says I politely offered to do this. As I recall, 20 minutes ago, he was asking for help with questions, and I gave a few too many that he said, why don't you just do it? Throw on a jacket and meet us downstairs. So thank you very much for the opportunity. I've spoken to both of these gentlemen before in casual circumstances. I did an interview with Derek Sloan a couple of weeks ago. I'm happy to be here. It was supposed to be a fireside chat, but Justin Trudeau said something about carbon emissions, so we've replaced it with a solar side chat. It's going to be just as good, though. Thank you very much, Paul Hinman, and of course, Derek Sloan. Give him a round of applause. So we're going to have this a little bit more of a free-form discussion. If anyone has any questions, write them down and pass them on to Danny. Don't make your question too good or he'll make you be the moderator. But in the meantime, he'll bring them up here and we'll ask them to the two gentlemen. Let's start with both of you on this one here. What do you see as being the biggest hurdle that you're facing in the battle that you're in? In your case, Derek, the Conservative leadership. In your case, Paul, dealing with the Western alienation. We'll start with you, Derek.
Sure. Well, I think that my message is resonating actually quite well with the Conservative base. The biggest hurdle I have is time, because even now a lot of people don't know me or don't know me very well, and so having a short amount of time favors candidates who are already well known. So I'm doing the best I can to reach people, and of course the lockdown didn't help either. I mean, I suppose it helped in the sense that our leadership race was expanded by a period of time. But now we only have a few weeks to, hit the road. So if you can help me by telling your friends that you like me, if you don't like me, don't bother telling your friends. But if you do, then please spread the word.
Biggest challenge is people's fear of change, I would say, and the unknown, and to be able to educate them and to comfort them to say, this isn't radical like our opposition wants to say it is, and this is reasonable, it's achievable. There's just a lot of fear mongering that goes on in politics on what we should and could do and what we shouldn't do, and I just think that it's reaching out, and again, say the other challenge is that my experience with what I call the average citizen is they're disgusted with politics and they don't want to be bothered with it, and to actually get people to say, this is different. We actually have an opportunity here to do something, and we need to act on it. And people say, oh, how many times I've heard that? And I says, well, you're hearing it once more, but please engage. That it's actually engaging people, believing that this time it's going to be different, because that's what they've been told their whole life.
In your case, Derek, you're not really pushing for change in the true sense, because you're actually calling for a return in a lot of cases to what are pretty fundamental conservative positions. Why does that seem to some people to be such a radical concept?
Well, I think that we've shifted so far to sort of judging our success by whether we're getting good mainstream media coverage. We've spent so much time watering down our approach that returning to a strong, true conservative message to some people it seems like an extreme thing. But I think anybody who listens to me for a period of time understands that really I'm preaching the same message that has been preached for a long time. But I'm very serious about it, and I'm trying to put it into practice as best I can, and sometimes that gets messy.
And in your case, Paul, you're promoting this idea of independence, which doesn't really have a cohesive definition. I'm sure if you asked everyone in this room what independence looks like, you're going to get some people that talk about, a renegotiated equalization. You're going to get other people that say they want an Alberta passport, they want, borders up, they want everything to do with Alberta and nothing to do with Canada. How do you basically have those different factions coalesce behind the idea of pushing for a better deal for Albertans, which seems to be the underpinning of all of those different factions?
Definitely challenging, and I guess the first thing in my communication, there is no fair deal. There has to be a new deal, and because there's no fair deal, we need to put our house in order. And as we do those things and get a police force and have an Alberta Revenue Agency and have our own immigration and pension plan and employment insurance, that we're putting our house in order. So if we can't get the new deal, well, we're gone. We're on our own. And it's just kind of a default situation that you end up in, because they're just not. There is no good deal. There's only a new deal and a new constitution, and to be treated as an equal partner in Canada, not as, like, say, the ugly stepchild that's out back doing all the chores.
So, I mean, Derek, suppose you're Prime Minister, and suppose you're dealing with this guy here as Alberta Premier. How do you respect that? Because you've established quite clearly you want to keep Canada together. That's your goal, and I think that's a laudable goal, and I think that it's one that might be contentious to some people in this room, but I think by and large there'd be national buy-in for that. How do you, as Conservative leader, as Prime Minister, potentially negotiate with an independence-focused Alberta Premier if that's the road we go down?
Well, my job as leader is to put Canada first, and his job as Premier of Alberta would be to put Alberta first, and hopefully have some concern for some other provinces, but if some synergism between the two. That's right. So I mean I don't mind people standing up for themselves or for their own rights, and I don't mind people who like to bargain and bargain hard. I wouldn't have a problem working with this gentleman or any other person, and I think that it would be his duty, of course, to put the province, the interest of the province first. Hopefully in the context of a confederation, but in any event, I would be happy to work with them.
Well, we're only looking for equality and equal treatment. We're not looking for special treatment, so shouldn't be a problem.
I think for most of the last few decades, the idea of provincial autonomy has really been a discussion limited to Quebec. Quebec is the only province, regardless of the esteem in which the people in this room hold Quebec, that has unabashedly put its own interests first and also has gotten away with it because of, I think, a lot of pandering, perhaps we could say. What are other opportunities you both see from a federal perspective or from a provincial perspective to push for greater provincial autonomy? Because if provinces like Alberta felt like they had more control, the alienation sentiments wouldn't be as strong as they are. Well, I don't know if I'm being laughed at or the concept of that being so far from what you've got now is the talking point or the punchline, but either way, we'll put it to you both.
Well, I think there are a lot of ways for the provinces to do more, and some of the ideas that you mentioned I think are good. One thing that I've mentioned over the course of this is that I would like provinces to have more control over immigration. And I believe the federal government, of course, needs to control, who comes. I'm not saying the provinces need to guard their borders per se, but working with the provinces to determine an optimum number of new immigrants that are coming in, because some places are saturated with immigrants, but others would like some. And I think that we need to look at the sort of settlement model that we had many years ago, which wasn't everybody go to Toronto. It was let's settle the four corners of this beautiful place and move out and truly settle the place, not just move downtown Toronto. So I think that does appeal to every Quebec audience I talk to, and maybe it would appeal to some people here as well.
I think history has proven over and over again that central government is faulty. It's your best government. It is the government closest to the people. Again, because I'm not too worried about what the feds want to do anymore, but we can use healthcare, for example. The Constitution says it's our responsibility, but yet this wolves eating sheep moral majority says, well, gosh, if we all vote for that, we can take that from them and redistribute it amongst us. And this idea of redistribution, and what I use is political slush funds to buy votes from one region to pit against another, is just wrong. And like I say, we got to have equality across the board, and moral majority isn't right. It's the individual rights. And we even have a problem here with our health board and education, where we centralized it to the detriment of our people. And so you need to realize and push everything that we're delivering down to the lowest level of government possible, and then we'll have a much better community, province, and country.
I always appreciate optimism, so I love the phrasing of this question, which I'm assuming is to Derek. How will you privatize the CBC? Not will you, how will you privatize the CBC? So you can accept or reject the premise, but that's the question to you, Derek.
Well, so I've said this a variety of times, and so I've dealt with a lot of mainstream media, And CBC is actually the best of a bad lot. And I think my experience with CTV and Global are much worse. CBC is filled with liberals who are, trying to stick it to you and trying to, maybe turn their words on you. But I've never had CBC misquote me. I've never had them put an article title that is exactly the opposite of something I've said. And I've seen all of those things with others. I'm not going to say who. So to me, to dismantle the CBC and then we're left with even worse players, I mean, it's not something I'm cheering at. I do think we need to significantly decrease their budget. I think we need to change their board of directors, change the way it operates. There's parts of the country in the north, the only thing they have is access to CBC radio. They have nothing else. So if it was used properly, in a way that reflected the needs and values of Canadians, I think it could serve a purpose as a public broadcaster. Do they need the type of budget that they have? No. Do they need to be reformed? Yes. So I'm not break them up and sell them for parts guy. To me, that's kind of too easy an answer. But that's my more nuanced approach to the CBC.
Now, will there be an Alberta public broadcaster under your government?
Well, they might broadcast to the public, but they won't be getting taxpayers' money.
Okay. You actually led into this question quite well, Derek, and it's one for both of you. How do you deal with media bias? Because there is a big problem, I think, in conservatism of the message not always, as you noted, getting through to the readers once it's been filtered through the reporters and the editors. And I think in a lot of cases, it lends itself to independent media becoming more important. But even so, you've both put forward positions on issues that the media might not be fans of. How do you plan to break through that and communicate in a more unbridled way with the people that you're trying to reach?
Well, I think we need to rely on people like yourself and others in the independent media. And we can't be afraid to deal with them. And I think it was a mistake on our part in the last election to, shun certain news groups. Because, why would you shun your friends? The mainstream media just wants to stick it to you anyway. So you might as well get some good clips with people that actually want to talk about your policies, not just, whether you think such and such is a sin or, they had some new question every day that had nothing to do with the election. It was just silly. So I think we need to be okay to work with our friends. We obviously need to use social media, which is a big thing. Short little videos and stuff, they get passed around. Also, sticking to your guns and being a no-compromise conservative gets you press. Yeah, it may be negative and all that, but you definitely get your stuff out there. So,
Paul.
I guess first and foremost, because it blew my mind the number of times that I was totally misquoted, and the reporter says, "That's absolutely what you said." And I says, "Well, no, I didn't," and they were just writing down hand notes. And so the first thing, and I haven't done it, but I didn't have time to go to the drugstore and buy one, but you really need to have your own personal recorder or somebody coming with you and actually record all the conversations. I felt even back in the Reform days, I said, look, I've been to your meetings, I've listened and read about it in the papers and in the radio the next day, and they're cutting clips and they're making a mess of this. And you need to have your own. And Derek's done a phenomenal job with what he's putting out on his website and his videos and stuff, so that you can actually, if somebody says something about Derek, I can say, well, no, go to his website and actually listen to him. Don't read what Andrew wrote about him. Go listen to what he's putting out there. So put out the information, have it easily available to people. And like I say, you really should be recording every conversation you have with these guys and gals, because it's astounding what they're thinking while you're talking.
I don't see a recorder right now, so what you're saying is you want to invade Saskatchewan? Oh, we do have one. I'm busted. Okay. I think it was the Kathy Young interviewing Jordan Peterson. So what you're saying is, after every question, when it didn't matter what he had actually said. Exactly. Let's turn to an issue that is of relevance to Alberta in the federal context and also in the provincial context, the energy sector, specifically pipelines. The specific question, and I'll let you answer it with whatever part of pipelines you want to, but the specific part is, help me understand your stance on an Energy East pipeline through Quebec. Surely sending Alberta crude to the East Coast refineries through the Panama Canal is unsustainable.
Yeah, you're right. You're right, it is. And so we need to make sure that that happens. And I believe there are ways to negotiate with provinces. There's all kinds of things the feds can offer, and provinces at the end of the day, I think can accept a lot of things. One point that I made in the French debate is that a lot of Quebecers are unaware of the fact that the quantity of oil going through Quebec on a train now is much more than it was right at the time of the Lac Mégantic disaster where so many people died. I think there's just an unawareness of the safety issues, the fact that that's even happening. And frankly, I think that with the right information, we can get provinces to buy in. So it's a must that we become, energy, self-sufficient, and also that we have coast-to-coast pipelines to be able to refine our own products. So it's a must that we do that, and I'm optimistic that it can happen.
One of the, I want to say, foresight that our founding fathers had was when they actually sent out the surveyors and set up the townships and actually provided right-of-ways. And we had the railroad, which was critical back in those days. And we've been talking about this for 20 years, but we need transportation corridors for power, electricity, for products, and that's a role that the feds should do. And I want to argue, take side here with Derek a little bit, that these illegal roadblocks and railroad blocks are against the law, and our Constitution says we have a right to transport these things, and the federal government should be pouncing immediately when there's a cost and a loss to a business. These people should be hauled into court and say, you can protest, but not on the road, not on the railroad. And the damages were $60 million, and the court judge comes down, and Greenpeace has a $60 million fine, and we literally move in, take their bank accounts, whatever it is. But when there's no accountability for these groups, no rule of law, it's just despicable to me. And we need governments, federal and provincial, that step in and put a stop to it.
And I completely agree. Yeah, and just a point of note, that rail blockade that happened was actually right in my riding. There's a reserve in my riding, and that's where it happened. So,
and I have to say, because I've been dealing with this in Alberta, and we've had, like the Calgary Ring Road and other ones where, we can't get ways, and that's why there is expropriation. We have some people that need to be extradited, though. But we have expropriation in the Constitution where people are fairly compensated, and it's one of these things that should just be the rule of law. You know what it's going to be, and people that stand in the way or groups that stand in the way have to be held accountable, and provincially and federally we've got to step in, or locally, and not wait for a militia or for the people to revolt. Is just that's what's causing the chaos and the anarchy, and we need rule of law. Just have to have it.
Yeah, and being also from Ontario, you can hold your applause, it's fine. The thing that I found fascinating was that our politicians were sitting on their hands pointing out that it was everyone else's fault and everyone else's problem out the rail blockades, and in Alberta it's a guy in a pickup truck that tends to just show up and dismantle the thing within 30 minutes. So it is that age-old expression, if you want something done. I don't know if it's avoid government or get an Albertan to do it. Either one works.
And they don't ask for permission first. That's the important part.
But there is something to that, and we've heard it discussed today a fair bit. There seems to be a general consensus that Albertans want to basically bring home their police force and have a provincial police force. So I'll start with you, Derek. From a federal perspective, if a province came to you that currently had the RCMP operating in a provincial capacity and said, listen, we want to bring this in-house, how do you respond to that?
Yeah, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it's their right to do that. I mean, obviously, Quebec does that, Ontario does that. It's totally Alberta's right to do that. If that's what they'd like to do, I'd be entirely in favor of it.
How much do you think that would change things, Paul? Because in a lot of cases, the provincial government still has some oversight over the RCMP in that province, and as we saw in the High River situation, it doesn't necessarily solve all the problems.
Well, someone was just asking me this earlier, but I think that it's critical that you have citizen or legislative oversight of the police force. Anything that happens in the dark, and like I say, there's no question to me that we should be able to FOIP those meetings, which Danielle, being the representative from High River, was excluded after 2 or 3 days because they were conspiring on what they were wanting to do. But those those meetings and what happened should be able to be FOIP'd and people held accountable. But this idea of protecting things and security, there is security issues, but not in High River. I'm sorry. They think that there is security issues there. Only thing they were securing was their butts, because their necks should have been in a noose. But no, we need a provincial police force, and not so much because of the past. My fear is the future. And it's too late when you need that, just like it's too late when you've lost your freedoms. We need the police force because of what's going to happen in the future, not because of what's happened in the past, in my opinion. Alberta needs its own personal security.
Let's turn to economics here. We have $343 billion debt federally. We just learned, we know that obviously at this point in time, governments have had to spend way outside their means, and I think some of this is probably justified because the governments are telling people they can't work, so I think they have to offer something. But either one of you, based on the time in which you're running as candidates, are going to have to contend with the problems that your predecessors have left for you. How will you do that? How will you deliver the growth and prosperity you want on one hand, while also dealing with the debt and deficits?
Well, I believe that we have to prioritize growth. There is a significant amount of waste in the federal government that needs to be cut, but we have to prioritize growth. And I think that by prioritizing economic growth as a first priority and then cutting waste as a second, what we need is to have the economy firing on all 6 cylinders, let's say on all 10 cylinders, better than it ever has been before. Obviously, the resource sector is key to that, but there's also innovation. And I was just at a meeting this afternoon where someone who works in the technology industry says, like there's so many people who, they have an idea and they go down to the States and they develop it there. So we need to keep our innovation here in Canada. And there's different ways to promote, for example, crowdfunding, which often is limited now because it gets entangled with securities laws. We need to remove regulation on some of these things to promote innovation in Canada, and I think that will help economic growth. Yes, we do need to cut things, but the economy is our biggest, growing the economy is our biggest focus.
Capital is so critical. You need to attract capital, and the number one thing that I would do, and I was so excited back when Harper and Flaherty talked about it, but we need to eliminate the capital gains tax. We need cash flow to be able to move. If you're in real estate and you want to go into business or somewhere else, let the money move, not being taxed, not being taken out of the entrepreneur's opportunity, because when money can move, the prosperity will come. But the number one thing is to reduce the size of government. Number two, and I would take issue, you said to get it going, but no, it's actually reducing the size and the cost of government, because that's where the waste is, and it's not going to hurt the economy. And number two is to lower taxes, and number three is to reduce those regulations and all of the prohibitive things where people look, I don't want to do business there. That we're open for business and we mean it. But when you look around the world at places like Hong Kong and Singapore and the other islands out there, that they have nothing, and they create great banking laws and protect people's interest. And Alberta should be a tax-free jurisdiction where someone wants to come and set up a research company or something, they can bring the capital in here and we're not going to attack them. And this idea that we're teaching our children that we got to tax corporations and we got to tax business. There's only one taxpayer, and that's the individual. And towns that that almost put a death spin on them because they tax. Well, Calgary is a good example. When you look at what they tax businesses there. I remember, and I was going to my local barber, and he says, "Paul, I have to cut." I think he said 170 haircuts before I've paid my overhead of my business with my municipal tax and everything else. And it was just impossible. He says, I'm running out of hours to be able to produce what I need to do. And if we want the economy to take off, reduce the taxes and reduce the taxes on businesses so that they can be there and actually compete with other jurisdictions, because we have a major problem. And again, we need to get rid of, the Constitution says that we have free trade amongst Canada, and we don't. And the government needs to step in and tell Quebec, you don't have this right, or to tell BC breweries that, you don't have that, you can't protect your businesses. Canada is supposed to be a free market. Alberta will be.
This one, I'm going to consolidate a few different questions that have put on a common theme forward. And I'll start with you, Derek, because I know you've spoken specifically about the Paris Accord and your desire to get out of it. We have, it seems like, an ever-growing number of these global United Nations non-binding declarations that Canadian lawmakers want to bind Canadians to, whether it's Global Compact on Migration, Paris 2030, UN Rights of Indigenous People, UN Declaration on Rights of Indigenous People, and so on. No matter which letters in the alphabet, they form a UN declaration that Canada has signed on to. What's your approach to these moving forward? Is it to get out of them all? Is it to look at everyone on its own merits?
Well, I'm skeptical of many of them because they come from the reality, which is the UN, and they come from a socialist, perspective. So there's very little that comes from them that we should really be signing on to. I don't think it does us any good to sign on to these things for any reason. I don't think it gives us capital in terms of our reputation around the world. I mean, look what Justin Trudeau was doing. He spent so much time and money trying to get a seat here, and he never even got it. And it's just about power brokering and giving money to other countries. And so I'm very skeptical about the utility of any of these agreements. Obviously, you take it as they come, but I'm largely skeptical.
The Republic of Alberta won't be going for a UN Security Council seat, will it?
We're going to take over the UN Security Council.
Okay, well, actually, that I can get behind.
No, it's a real problem, and again, it goes back to the basic principle: the best government is the local government, the closest to your people, and the further you get away, the less accountability. And you look at the EU and their problems with their bureaucracy that runs things. We should be absolutely, totally, categorically against these world policies and having them imposed on us and acting like we're the great sinners of the world and causing all this chaos, when in fact you look at the corruption like the UN. Is there 600 of them that are making over $1 million a year or something on the UN payroll? But it's criminal, and we need to recognize it as that and get out of the World Health Organization and the UN and any other of those pacts. The Paris Agreement, they're all just socialist snake oil that is literally a false economy, making promises that we're going to heal your country and your economy, and again, you're just sick after sending the money, and there's no cure.
And one of the great oxymorons, of course, is global community. The idea that a Somalian warlord has, as much in common with someone who lives on 33rd Street Northeast in Calgary, because we're all part of the same global community. Yet in many cases, there are lawmakers in Canada that are prepared to surrender that sovereignty to the so-called global community. So how do you push back against this? And not just on the UN declarations, but even on trade. And we've seen this with a heavy reliance on products made in China, which, by the way, I think we saw the severe problems with when no one in Canada could access personal protective equipment at the height of the coronavirus pandemic because all of our stuff had been shipped to China and we had no domestic manufacturing. So how do you deal with the sovereignty question when it comes to not just autonomy, but trade?
Well, I think it comes down to the values question of, does Canada have anything distinctive to offer? And of course it does. But when you water it down the way Justin Trudeau has done, he comes at it from a perspective of, Canada, China, Somalia, it's all one big happy family. We need to focus on the fact that Canada does have advantages in terms of skilled labor and quality in manufacturing. So yeah, I think we definitely, in putting Canada first, need to focus on trading relationships with not for the sake of just trading, but the sake of advancing our position in working with countries that play by similar rules and aren't cheating and trying to undermine our own economy through their actions.
Well, Alberta's national security, first you got to look at what your essential services are. And a good one right now, and we're the last of all of the free world, that, Huawei, do we want their 5G technology? Mm-hmm. I say categorically no, but yet we haven't moved on that yet. And I totally agree with Derek that we deal with jurisdictions that recognize the rule of law as we do. And if their rule of law is flawed, and you look at a lot of these countries and their labor abuse and all of the abuse of their individual ethnic groups, religious groups, I mean their gender attacks, and we should not be having open free trade on national security items and others that we should be looking at. And again, what we want is people to raise up to our standards, to be part of our trading group, but we can't sell out to Venezuela, and say, oh, their oil's good in the East, but ours isn't. And there's a lot of hypocrisy that I think needs to be exposed on where things are coming from and how good it is. I've always been, and the people don't like this, but I've always been a believer in truth in labeling. And where's it's been growing, how's it been handled, and where's it from? Because our labeling laws are just very lopsided in favor of the producer or the business person that wants to sneak it in and make it say, oh, it's a product of Canada because we spent all this money processing it, when no, it came from North Korea. We need truth in labeling, and we need to have our, like I say, those things that are important, our food supply, our fuel supply, our medical supplies, and our pharmaceuticals. Let's sit down and have a real discussion on what's essential, and then see if our tax laws or what are doing that, why have we pushed these off, and we shouldn't be allowing things coming in from mainland China that could be a detriment to Canadians or Albertans.
And I don't know if, yes, please. I don't know if anyone saw the story this week, but the Canadian government has awarded a $6.8 million contract for embassy security services to a Chinese state-owned enterprise. So there's a lot wrong with that sentence, and I was reading about the company, and this is not a joke. The company was called the Huawei of airport security. And I don't know if that was meant as a compliment, because that kind of sounds like the Ted Bundy of women's rights. But ultimately speaking, we've got the Canadian government that sees no issue with awarding a contract to Chinese state-owned enterprises. That's bad enough. You go one step further for security against a country that we know has run intelligence operations. And I know that both of you nodding furiously would suggest that you're against this. But I guess the question is, how do you break through something that seems so ingrained in Canadian policy that this was a back-page news story, basically?
Well, we're getting very close to the time where that is going to be front-page news, and I'm surprised it wasn't more based on what we've seen with COVID-19 and China's response to it. Obviously, the Federal Conservative Party is far more China skeptic, China concerned than the Liberals are. Liberals have basically done nothing. So, I mean, obviously it's about a change in power federally, but pretty soon the average person is going to be clamoring for it. I don't know anybody, conservative or not, who trusts China right now and thinks that would think that would be a good idea. I don't know a single person.
The federal health minister begs to differ.
Yeah.
Let's turn to, I think, a very key issue for a lot of people moving forward is, I think, the timeline for Alberta independence. And I know that there's going to be a lot of talk this weekend about the process that takes. And I guess the question would be to you both. I mean, where do you see the biggest priorities for you, Paul, on the Alberta side, and for you, Derek, on the Canada side, in dealing with that dialogue when it comes up? I mean, it is coming up, but when it comes up in a more formalized capacity, if there's a referendum, for example.
Well, first of all, because I'm not the premier, and Wild Rose Independence Party isn't the government, the timeline at this point is definitely 2023. Premier Kenney has said, he has no interest in that, not going to go there. But again, as far as the timeline goes together, if the movement grows and those things that we can have full autonomy on, the Premier moves towards, I think that moves up the vote and the ability to become independent. But there's a lot of things that have to go in place in my mind, but before we can have that vote, I don't just want an immediate vote because we want it out there, and we look at Brexit or, and the issues that they're going through, and it's just not a clean way through. And so if we put our house in order first, and do all of that, then we can be prepared for that vote and let Albertans. And again, another part is that we really believe in citizens' initiatives. And if you could allow like the different groups out there to gather the petition to get it onto a referendum sooner, even better. And that's where we need the power with the people and not waiting for politicians to bring those forward. The citizens' initiative would be a wonderful ability to get that done. And if Premier Kenney gives us citizens' initiative here next week or the week after that, then there's a lot of Albertans that could go to work to try and get that vote if that's what they want.
So let's go with, I think, one of the big points that you've really raised throughout your campaign, Derek, and that's the social conservative credentials that you have. You've been unabashed, unapologetic about them. There are a lot of people that may be on side with you on guns, on taxes, on everything else, but that's one thing that they can't agree with you on. What's your message to those people as you head into the leadership race to get them to vote for you?
Well, you know what? I haven't met too many people who are on side with me on all of those things and don't see where I'm coming from, at least with the others. You know, I think it's fair to say. I mean, you know, it's fair to say that right now, you know, I explained to you, you know, earlier today, for example, why the bill C8 is just so out of line, and that, you know, it's pretty easy, no matter what you really value, to say, look, that's going too far, especially when we're talking about kids, and even with the abortion issue. I mean, again, we're talking about, and for someone who maybe completely disagrees with me, although I've never met a conservative who's like, there's two kinds of conservatives. They all agree that the status quo is wrong, but there's some that want to do something about it, and there's some that say, well, you know what, we should just don't do that. It's going to sewer the election, we'll worry about it later. But I haven't met one who says, yeah, you know, completely no laws, whatever, on abortion are good or is the right way. So my message to that person who thinks, no, don't do it now, just wait and, you know, let it take care of itself. This is a place where the Liberals have overextended themselves. They overextend themselves on many things. And if we just let it go, then they're going to hammer us with it. It's crazy that we live in a country that doesn't have any laws. We're one of the only countries in the world that has no laws whatsoever regulating abortion. And we let them hammer us on that? Come on. You know, like, this is the type of thing, you stand up a little bit. You know, you do something maybe that is universally agreed upon within the movement. There's many ways to address it. It could be something as simple as saying, listen, you know, you need to have an ultrasound prior to this, or counseling or something. I mean, you know, there's many different things we could do, but you gotta stake a position on every issue, because the Liberals do that, and if you let it go, they'll hammer you on it. So you pick ground in every position.
Let me ask you then, Paul, do you see independence as being a one-trick pony movement, in the sense that if you can have someone on side with you on independence, it doesn't matter what they think about all the other things? Because theoretically, independence would be an issue that cuts across party lines. I've not seen that. You may have a different perspective on that.
Well, there's certainly people that's the only thing on their agenda, but no, I do not see that as a one-trick pony. And again, independence without our house in order, we still have the problem. And so you need good government, you need accountability. And again, I'm going to say, when we were talking about the economy, part of that new deal, that new constitution, has to absolutely have balanced budget legislation, or not in our constitution, that actually ties the hands of politicians. This idea that we're not constrained is not good, and it's a vote buying scheme. And so lost my train of thought on that, but we need to have those things in place, and if we don't, it's going to be to our detriment. Just saying, oh, we're going to be independent and nothing else to worry about. We have a lot of other issues that need to be put in place.
It's like, I don't know if anyone's seen Hamilton, but it's that song, What Comes Next? It's, sure, you may get the independence, but you've got to figure out the next chapter there. We have run out of time, although we do want to give both of you an opportunity to just give closing thoughts, call for support, tell people your favorite thing about Calgary in July. It's up to you, but we'll start with you, Paul.
Well, I think it's very exciting. The reason why I got involved is so people have choice. I didn't have a choice. I didn't have a future for my children and my grandchildren. I believe it's time to step forward and just do it. We need to put our house in order, and as we put our house in order, our independence will come in place. And Alberta, as Drew said, can be the best place in the world, the richest, the finest. We have so much here, from our resources to our people to the businesses, the economy, and it's just exciting to me, the opportunity that we have. But what we don't have is good government. What we don't have is a good constitution. What we don't have is a good police force. And those are things that we need to work together, and we can have those things, but we have to stand up and do it. We can't sit back and leave it to someone else. It's going to take each of us as individuals to get involved, to step up, buy memberships, donate money to a cause, and once more have that eternal optimism that this time we're going to do it. But thank you.
Thank you, and we'll go to Derek for the last word.
Sure, thank you so much. And I just wanted to be clear, if there was any confusion, that I'm absolutely against federal government waste. But it is easier to, there's certain things you can do immediately to boost the economy, and some of the things, when it comes to funding, eco-radical groups, you can do that immediately, but there's other things that are more of a process when it comes to dealing with waste. So I didn't want there to be any ambiguity on that.
I wasn't accusing you of any waste.
Okay, on that point. I just wanted to say, for those of you who are involved in this leadership race, in the sense of being party members and being able to vote and so forth, see this process through. Vote according to who the best leader of the party is. There's no strategy here. The strategy is you rank whoever you want to lead the party in that order. That's the strategy. There's no strategic vote. See what comes of this. And I hope today, being with you, I've earned hopefully your first vote. If not that, maybe your second. But let's see what becomes of this. And I believe that Alberta deserves a fair deal. And hopefully the leader that you guys have provincially will be one that will obviously want to work with the feds, but will be able to put Alberta's interests at heart and bargain hard. So I'm looking forward to dealing with whichever leader runs your province. And I thank you for having me. And I hope that I've expressed my genuine concern for the country. And with me, at least you know what you get. And I promise to uphold the values that I've shared with you today. So thank you so much, and God bless you all.
Thank you. And before Danny pulls me off the stage, as he's so subtly poised to do, I just want to give a very shameless plug. On July 29th, I'll be moderating a Conservative leadership debate, which will be the last of the debate cycle. It's going to be through the Independent Press Gallery, of which I'm a founding member, and I thank all of you who... Thank you. All of you who have shown your support, including Derek. Thank you for that plug earlier on. So that's going to be on July 29th. All candidates are participating, so you'll be able to see Derek there, and I hope very much that you're able to tune into that. So my thanks again to Paul Hinman and Derek Sloan for coming on. Really appreciated it. Give them both a round of applause. And with that, I am speaking first thing tomorrow morning, so I ask that you don't party too hard. And now I'll turn things back to our fearless host, Danny Hozak.
Thank you. Well, let's give Andrew another round of applause for, when you can do that on 15 minutes notice, I can my expectations, having given you 4 days notice for tomorrow morning, I was I don't think I'll be able to sleep, but in any event, I probably will. But thank you, Andrew. Thank you for sharing your time with us today. Derek, I think I'm speaking for everyone here to say that we have thoroughly enjoyed getting to meet you. I think it's a sincere commitment to our province that Derek has taken the time to be here. And like I say, I would like to see everybody give him their first vote. We all have our choice who the second vote can be, but you, of all the four, took the time to come here. I hope you're going away with a better understanding of our concerns that would make you a better leader when you win. And so, and now you'll know who you're going to be dealing with. So, you can sort of start, preparing yourself for that. So, let's just let's thank them for all they're doing for our country, and then we'll. we'll adjourn for the evening, and I'll be up at 8:45 with opening remarks, so everybody try and be here by 9 to hear Andrew Lawton. So anyway, let's get started first thing in the morning. Thank you for a wonderful day, everyone. Thank you.